So hi everyone, so today we will be discussing conflict management together with my group mates. But before that, I'd like to introduce myself to each of you. My name is Romel Gonzalez and I'm currently teaching at Natatas Elementary School wherein I teach grade 4 pupils with different subjects. So today, without further ado, we will discuss the conflict management. So before that, let's define first conflict management. So when we say conflict, this can be defined as expressed struggle between at least two interdependent parties who perceive that incompatible goals, scarce resources, or interference from others are preventing them from achieving their goals. So these conflicts can lead to disappointments. These should be addressed by the group of people. We should have a proper communication with each other in order to achieve our goals. And we have the general causes of conflicts. First is scarcity of resources such as finance, equipment, facilities, or etc. And we also have different attitudes, values, or perception. So we are different from each other. However, we have to understand their thoughts, their opinions, or even their suggestions for us to be able to learn from each other and to know what can be accepted or what can be learned from other people as well. So then the third one is disagreements about needs, goals, priorities, and interests. And the most important is the poor communication. We should avoid this. We should have a good communication for us to be able to have harmonious relationship with each other. And the next one is poor or inadequate organizational structure, lack of teamwork, and lack of clarity in roles and responsibilities. So we have the conflict resolution strategies. So these can be used in order to meet our goals. The first one is the conflict resolution. So this is the process of resolving a dispute by addressing and meeting at least some of each side's needs and concerns. So like what I have said earlier, if you do have conflict with each other or in your group of friends or group of management, if there is a conflict with each other, we have to address these needs and concerns for us to be able to avoid these conflicts. Create a productive workplace and effective team dynamic. So we have 5 conflict resolution styles that vary in their degrees of cooperativeness and assertiveness. So when we say cooperativeness, it is extent to which the individual attempts to satisfy and consider the other individual's issues. And assertiveness is extent to which the individual attempts to satisfy own concerns. They need to improve or to avoid. So once you grasp the different styles, you can think about your own approach, learn how you need to change, and think the most appropriate approach for each situation. Here are the 5 conflict resolution styles. First is competitive, collaborative, compromising, accommodating, and avoiding. So these 5 should be remembered, or these 5 can be used in order to avoid these conflicts. First is competitive. This is assertive and uncooperative. Competitive is a power-oriented mode. People will be operating from a position of power, such as position or persuasive ability. So everyone is competitive. We want to compete with other people. As long as we know our strengths and weaknesses, we can compete with other people. But you have to remember your responsibilities, your roles, why you are doing this, in order to be misunderstood by other people, or in order to avoid being misunderstood by other people. This is the best use when swift action is required in case of emergency or when the decision is undesirable. Competitive, or however, it can leave people feeling alienated when used in less important situations. And the next one is collaborative. So collaborative is the best use to bring together a variety of viewpoints to get the best solution or when the situation is too important for a trade-off. You have to collaborate with other people, learn to accept their opinions, learn to get their informations in order to build a relationship with each other. And compromising. It is intermediate in assertiveness and cooperativeness. You find a solution that will, to some extent, satisfy everyone. Everyone is expected to give up and relinquish something. And the third one is accommodating. It is the meeting the needs of others at the expense of own needs. You have to know what they need or what they are needing. This is the best use also when you realize that you were wrong and you want to allow a better solution to be considered. So you have to consider their thoughts, their perceptions about something. Hindi natin kailangan magmagaling. We have to avoid that in order to lessen these conflicts. Kung meron tayong magandang informations na mabibigay sa ibang tao, kung merong nabibigay na magandang thoughts or ideas ang isang tao, then try to accept it and try to put them together para mas magkameron tayo ng magandang relationship at magandang output. And the next one is avoiding. This is the best use when the conflict is not important. At the end of it, maayos at maayos siya as long as you know how to handle it. When winning is impossible and you perceive that change won't occur, this is also the best use to reduce tensions and get back to productive levels and regain harmony and composure. So from being aggressive to composed. So you can confidently say whatever you want as long as you can hurt somebody, as long as you know how to handle situations, then you can face other people with high hopes, with so much confidence and so much passions with whatever you do. So those are the things that you need to consider or you need to understand to avoid conflict. Problems may be encountered, but problems can be solved, and just let people understand with the things that they see in you, because I believe that at the end of the day they can judge you by the things they just see in you, but let them realize your worth because of how you work. So let us now proceed to our second three-pointer. Thank you.
Here are some tips for managing conflict. The first one is accept conflict. Remember that conflict is natural and happens in every ongoing relationship. Since conflict is unavoidable, we must learn to manage it. Conflict is a sign of a need for a change and an opportunity for growth, new understanding, and improved communication. Conflict cannot be resolved unless it is addressed with the appropriate individuals. Be a calming agent. Regardless of whether you are being a sounding board for a friend or you are dealing with your own conflict, your response to the conflict can escalate or decrease the intensity of the problem. To be calming, provide an objective or neutral point of view. Help plan how you are going to work with the other party to achieve the resolution. Listen actively. Work through how you feel, what the specific problem is, and what impact it is having on you. Use I-B statements. To help to do this, you can use this formula. I feel. This pertains to your strongest feelings. When you. It is the objective description of the behavior of your conflict. Because. This is the specific impact or consequences of the conflict. Then, I would like. It is what you want the person to do in the future to prevent the problem. Then, you can analyze the conflict. This will help the specific problem to clarify. Some questions that you may ask are, what triggered the conflict? Who are you angry with? What are you not getting that you want? What are you afraid of losing? Is your conflict or anger accurate or over-exaggerated? How can your conflict be resolved? Model neutral language. When people are in conflict, they use inflammatory language such as profanity, name-calling, and exaggerations that escalate the conflict. Restate inflammatory language in a more objective way to help make the information less emotionally laden and more useful for the future discussion. Separate the person from the problem. View the problem as a specific behavior or set of circumstances rather than attribute negative feelings to the whole person. This approach makes the problem more manageable and hopeful than deceiving you can stand this person anymore. Then you can work together. This requires that each person stop placing blame and take ownership of the problem. Make a commitment to work together and listen to each other to solve the conflict. 8. Agree to disagree. Each person has a unique point of view and rarely agrees on every detail. Being right is not what is important. When managing conflict, seeking the truth can trap you rather than set you free. For example, consider the differing testimony of witnesses that all see the same car accident. Truth is relative to the person's point of view. Focus on the future. In conflict, we tend to remember every single thing that ever bothered us about that person. People in conflict need to vent about the past, but they often dwell on the past. Often the best way to take ownership of the problem is to recognize that regardless of the past, you need to create a plan to address the present conflict and those that may arise in the future. Move past position. A position is the desired outcome of a conflict. Often the position is, I need a new roommate, or this person is impossible to live with. Positions are not negotiable and result in impasse. To resolve conflict, each person have to move past position. Share your interests. To solve interpersonal conflict, all parties must talk about their interests or the whys behind their positions. They must share their true interests and work together to find a solution that satisfies those interests. Common interests for students are to sleep, study, entertain, and relax in a comfortable atmosphere. Often their interests are more intangible such as respect, belonging, friendship, and fun. When individuals have different lifestyles, values, and schedules, the need to discuss their differences is critical in managing conflict. You must develop a balanced plan and give and take that satisfies everyone's interests. Be creative. Finding a solution to the problem that satisfies everyone requires creativity and hard work. Be careful not to give in simply to avoid conflict or maintain harmony. Agreements reached too early usually do not last. Generate silly options to begin thinking outside the box of the original position. Be specific. When problem solving, be very specific. For example, if you are using a roommate agreement to facilitate the discussion, make sure that everyone fully understands each point that is written down. Clarify ambiguous terms that each person may interpret differently. Maintain confidentially. Encourage others who are in conflict to deal directly with the person they are in conflict with. Avoiding the conflict and venting to others tends to escalate the conflict and fuels the rumor mill. If rumors are already part of the conflict, encourage them to work out a plan to put an end to the gossip. Do your part to quell rumors. Managing workplace conflict. In managing conflict, the first thing you have to keep in mind that people have different perceptions. Therefore, getting on one single ground is necessary for you. Now, if you look at certain conflicts that you have encountered in the past, you will realize that it's all because of lack of communication, lack of information, misinformation, or no information at all. This creates conflicts. You need not other person to. In managing conflict, the first thing you have to keep in mind that people have different perceptions. Therefore, getting on one single ground is necessary for you. Now, if you look at certain conflicts that you have encountered in the past, you will realize that it's all because of lack of communication, lack of information, misinformation, or no information at all. This creates conflicts. You need not other person to approach you. Go ahead and take that step and communicate your issues. And then, understand why he or she came out to this point. Once you understand it, then take the next step forward to solve the issue. And this has to be done with a very open mind. The first is approach the conflict with an open mind. The second thing that you need to keep in mind is to control your emotions. Well, let not the emotions control you. What happens if you let the emotions control you? You will never get the positive outcomes of any conversations that you have. Now, there are people who loves to be the drama queen or drama kings. They love to show off their crocodile tears the moment they have to face conflict. So, do you think is that right? Well, do you think these people who take this blame game that, hey, you are responsible for this, do you think that works for you? Well, definitely not. If you throw foot off the bridge in the heat of the moment, you are not protecting yourself. You are ruining it. So, stay focused to the point and try to get a positive outcome. Therefore, it's important for you to control your emotions and not let emotions control you. Another thing that you need to note of is stop assuming. When someone says something and the next moment you start rolling your eyes with anger, well, stop jumping into any conclusions. Relax. Let not your brain go numb or think negatively. Try to understand and give the person benefit of doubt. Yes, probably other person said something incorrect, but it's not necessary that it meant to blame you or it meant to put you down. So, you need to just relax, try to understand how to chat with the other person, and understand and acknowledge what they are saying. Then, paraphrase what they just said, so this will help you to put your point forward. So, the next time someone just say something, please don't just jump into any conclusions. Don't start think negatively. It's important for you to acknowledge and also give benefit of the doubt to other person. Approach the conflict as an opportunity. Well, there are always hidden potentials when you get into the conflict. When you're in conflict, think of what's there for you. Think in a positive way. Because to every conflict, there's differences. And the moment you start arguing about this, you're gonna come out with different innovation. Through this, you're gonna progress in what you think and the way you talk it out. So, don't you think it is a very positive way or very positive sign in having a conflict with someone? There's also a potential of growth and development. So, learn from your conflicts and go ahead and grab that opportunity in a very positive way.
Good morning. Today, we will learn about conflict management techniques. A conflict is a situation when the interests, needs, goals, or values of involved parties interfere with one another. In the workplace, conflicts are common and inevitable. Different stakeholders may have different priorities. Conflicts may involve team members, departments, projects, organization, and client, boss and subordinate. Organization needs versus personal needs. Often, a conflict is a result of perception. Is conflict a bad thing? Not necessarily. Often, a conflict presents opportunities for improvement. Therefore, it is important to understand and apply various conflict resolution forcing, also known as competing. An individual firmly pursues his or her own concerns despite resistance from the other person. This may involve pushing one viewpoint at the expense of another or maintaining fair resistance to another person's actions. Examples of when forcing may be appropriate. In certain situations when all other, less forceful methods don't work or are ineffective. When you need to stand up for your own rights, resist aggression or pressure. Possible advantages of forcing may provide a quick resolution to a conflict, increases self-esteem and draws respect when firm resistance or actions were the response to aggression or hostility. Some caveats of forcing may negatively affect your relationship with the opponent in the long run, may cause the opponent to react in the same way, even if the opponent did not intend to be forceful originally. Win-win collaborating, also known as confronting the problem or problem solving. Collaboration involves an attempt to work with another person to find a win-win solution to the problem at hand, the one that most satisfies the concerns of both parties. The win-win approach sees conflict resolution as an opportunity to come to a mutually beneficial result. It includes identifying your opponent's underlying concerns and finding an alternative which meets each party's concerns. Examples of when collaborating may be appropriate. When consensus and commitment of other parties is important. In a collaborative environment, when addressing the interest of multiple stakeholders is required. When a high level of trust is present. Possible advantages of collaborating leads to solving the actual problem, leads to a win-win outcome, reinforces mutual trust and respect. Some caveats of collaborating requires a commitment from all parties to look for a mutually acceptable solution, may require more effort and more time than some other methods. A win-win solution may not be evident. Compromising, also known as reconciling. Compromising looks for an expedient and mutually acceptable solution which partially satisfies both parties. Examples of when compromise may be appropriate. When the goals are moderately important and not worth the use of more assertive or more involved approaches such as forcing or collaborating to reach temporary settlement on complex issues, to reach expedient solution on important issues. Possible advantages of compromise: faster issue resolution, Compromising may be more practical when time is a factor, can provide a temporary solution while still looking for a win-win solution. Some caveats of using compromise may result in a situation where both parties are not satisfied with the outcome or a lose-lose situation, does not contribute to building peace in the long run. Possible advantages of withdrawing. When the opponent is forcing or attempts aggression, you may choose to withdraw and postpone your response until you are in a more favorable circumstance for you to push back. Withdrawing is a low-stress approach when the conflict is short, gives the ability or time to focus on more important or more urgent issues instead. Some caveats of withdrawing may lead to weakening or losing your position. Not acting may be interpreted as an agreement. Using withdrawing strategies without negatively affecting your own position requires certain skills and experience. When multiple parties are involved, withdrawing may negatively affect your relationship with the party that expects your action. Smoothing, also known as accommodating. Smoothing is accommodating the concerns of other people first, rather than prioritizing one's own concerns. Examples of when smoothing may be appropriate. When it is important to provide a temporary relief from conflict or buy time until you are in a better position to respond or push back. When the issue is not as important to you as it is to the other person. When you accept that you are wrong. Possible advantages of smoothing. In some cases, smoothing will help to protect more important interests while giving us on some less important ones. Gives an opportunity to reassess the situation from a different angle. As a rule, does not require much effort. Some caveats of smoothing. The risk of being abused is real. The opponent may try to constantly take advantage of your tendency toward smoothing accommodating. Therefore, it is important to maintain the right balance, and this requires some skill. May negatively affect your confidence in your ability to respond to an aggressive opponent. Makes it more difficult to transition to a win-win solution in the future. Conflict resolution skills. Conflict resolution is the process in which two or more parties work towards a solution to a problem or dispute. The issue negatively affects one party or multiple and has escalated to the point where it needs to be addressed. Participants are then required to work together to produce a common agreement that resolves the issue. If you are not quite sure how you can best use those skills to resolve your debates, take a look at these tips we recommend considering when approaching your next conflict. Number 1 is don't jump to the defense. In any conflict, whether it be professional or personal, it's easy to jump to the defense sort of agreement between both parties. Thus, you sometimes need to let go of your pride and your grip on your argument. Show the opposing party that, as much as you care about the conflict and about your side, you care more about coming to a solution that pleases everyone and has the necessary impacts. Number 7. Don't talk behind people's backs. What happens between you and the opposing party should stay between you and them, unless it's absolutely necessary to divulge the details of your conflict. Conflict resolution should always be built on honesty with one another and trust that what was said will remain secret. While you may sometimes have the urge to vent, consider other options to do so that won't affect the reputation of that person. You could write out your feelings in a journal or talk to someone who has no ties to that person and keep their name anonymous. This way, you can protect the privacy of the conversation. Number 8 is don't take anything personally. A conflict with a customer or team member is typically not a conflict with you personally. It usually involves your professional role or something that occurred to or with you. Thus, a conflict that emerges is never an attack on you. Many people get defensive or upset or refuse to budge on an argument because they cling to their viewpoint as a part of themselves. If you can learn to separate yourself from the conflict, it will be a lot easier to accept compromise or a collaborated solution that is, at the end of the day, better for all parties involved. Number 9 is pay close attention to nonverbal communication. Not everyone is great at handling conflict head-on. These are the people who might typically lean towards avoiding or accommodating as their conflict management styles. Basically, these people don't like conflict and won't always be transparent with you about what they want or need. In these situations, it's important to pay attention to their nonverbal communication. Body language can tell you when someone is saying one thing but means another. By being emotionally aware, you can notice when someone's posture, gestures, or facial expressions differ from their words. When someone says, "I'm fine," you can tell they're not fine if they avert their eyes. Then, you can create an environment that makes that person feel more comfortable being honest with you. Lastly, number 10. Prioritize resolving the conflict over being right. A conflict in the workplace is typically one that involves more than just yourself. Perhaps it's a frustrating call with an angry customer or an issue with a policy change implemented by your manager. Whatever it may be, the situation goes beyond you. Thus, when you're trying to resolve the conflict, you might need to take a step back and assess the situation in such a way. Recognize that even if you have a strong opinion on one end of the spectrum, it might be beneficial to wave the white flag if it ultimately improves the conditions for everyone else. Conflict resolution is occasionally about making those sacrifices. Thank you. I hope you learned something in the topic. Argument. Take it as an opportunity to see things from a different point of view. You don't have to agree with that person, but you can try to understand where they're coming from. Just as you have your opinion, they have theirs, and refusing to hear their point of view creates an impossible scenario to navigate. Instead, change those yes but statements into "I understand" and statements that build off one another rather than tearing each other down. Number 2. Don't point fingers. On the opposite side, jumping on the offensive is also disrespectful and creates a negative foundation where a final solution is often hopeless. Don't put blame on others or create a space in which someone feels unsafe to voice their opinion. The best way to solve a conflict is by allowing each person to frame their argument without being blamed or shut down. After all, you wouldn't appreciate the same being done to you either. Number 3. Let the person explain themselves and actively listen. Listening is a huge aspect of conflict resolution that's typically overlooked. Your goal is often to get your voice in as much as possible so you can explain every little detail of your argument and try as hard as you can to get the opposing party to see your side. Instead, let the other person explain themselves, uninterrupted. You may find that you misinterpreted their original argument and you'll be more equipped to handle compromising or collaborating on a new solution when you've taken the time to listen, think, and plan. Number 4 is using I statement. Similarly to pointing fingers, a series of statements that begin with you clearly come off as blaming. Conflict isn't about what the other person is doing wrong. It's about what you believe you're doing right. Thus, using I statements such as, I feel like I'm not getting the chance to explain myself, rather than, you're not listening to me, can totally transform your conversation. These sentences will make your argument more about your emotions, opinions, personal beliefs, and morals rather than about all the things you don't like about the opposing party. No one can disagree with something you believe or stand by, and it makes for a more respectful debate. Number 5 is maintain a calm tone. No effective conflict resolution was ever born from anger and tears. You need to remain level-headed in order to think rationally about a solution that appeases both parties. Wait until you've let out your emotions before you plan a time to meet and discuss with the opposing party. You're allowed to yell, cry, vent, or whatever else you need, but do it on your own time. When you enter the conflict resolution meeting, you should be calm and ready to debate with consideration for differing